Thank you all for joining us for today's non-ESB series webcast, Enterprise Service Bus for the .NET Developer, presented by Marty Wasznicky. My name is Meredith Mead, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for Neudesic and the moderator for today's webcast. This webcast is presented by Marty Wasznicky, Neudesic's Director of Product Business Development. We are very excited to have him present for us this morning. Today's webcast is a part of our non-ESB series. We will be hosting our next webcast, Web Services and Patterns, on December 9th. We'll also be hosting a Neuron Demo Tips and Tricks webcast on November 18th. We will be sending out more information about these webcasts along with today's webcast recording. If you're all logged on, you should be able to see the title slide that states Enterprise Service Bus for the .NET Developer. There was a brief intro earlier regarding features within Live Meeting. To briefly recap, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the session by typing them in. To ask a question, click on the Q&A verbiage located in the toolbar on the top left side of your screen. Type your question, then click the Ask button. Please note all questions will be held until the end. We will also be using the seating chart feature within Live Meeting. Changing your feedback color within this tool provides feedback to the presenter. To provide feedback, click on the feedback menu found in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Select your feedback color. Your seat in the conference center will display your selected color. Lastly, this webcast is being recorded and will be available via the Neudesic website. We will email you when the link is available. If everyone is ready, please make sure your seat color is green. At this time, I'd like to turn our presentation over to Marty.
Well, hello, everyone, and thanks for joining. I think I was already introduced, but my name is Marty Wasznicky. I've been with Neudesic for about 3 years now, working on integration with Neuron. I was with Microsoft for 6 years, doing very much the same thing, also producing the Microsoft ESB guidance. I'm excited to be here today and excited to talk about this subject. We have an agenda we put together. Some of the things I want to talk about are a lot of the common integration challenges we face today when trying to develop distributed systems. It tends to be hard, it tends to be a lot of plumbing involved. And really how an enterprise service bus can benefit .NET developers. A lot of developers shy away from a lot of these integration tools, sometimes for a very good reason. I think we've really done a great job with Neuron to be very attractive to that .NET developer to really overcome a lot of these common integration challenges. Next, I'd like to actually go into the product and show more advanced things with pipelines. We previously did a webcast on tips and tricks where we did a little bit with the .NET API that we have, did some work with the pipelines, even work with some adapters. We're going to try to take it a little bit further today, show you how you can actually control auditing, logging, access some of that Neuron configuration at runtime, building adapters, configuring, the importance of metadata, as well as maybe some more advanced ideas and concepts around auditing and how you can leverage that in your own applications. So first, we want to talk about those common integration challenges. As I said, developing complex distributed systems is just hard work. It takes time and it takes skills. You end up dealing with complex patterns you've never used before. You have to deal with concurrency, multi-threaded applications. Should really developers be writing a lot of plumbing and infrastructure, or should that be provided to them? Now, adopting an integration tool generally has always meant, hey, you've got a tool that says it does all these things, comes at a price though. Typically the tool set's complex. The tools themselves are tightly coupled. Usually these tools, they introduce new technologies, whether it's WSDL, schemas, different transports and network protocols that developers might not have used in the past. Usually proprietary tools, proprietary skills. Sometimes they introduce a cumbersome process because of the dependencies between a lot of these tools. A lot of tools out there compile each element into their own, say, assemblies, whether those are schemas into assemblies, maps into assemblies, pipelines into assemblies, and then they tend to reference one another back and forth to the point where, hey, if you need to change something, that's a very difficult process. And hence, what happens? The .NET developer isn't working the way they're used to work. They're used to being agile, making changes quickly. So to use an integration tool, really, it can't change the way you really work, not if it's going to be effective. So an ESB can really help developing large, reliable distributed systems. if it's done right. At the end of the day, we really want something to provide us the plumbing, make things easier. Do I need to have a PhD in WCF to use WCF? I shouldn't have to. I should have a tool that makes that a very easy thing to do. And integrating the other systems. Well, you know, these things should be able to do that fairly easily. I shouldn't have to understand the other system that much. I shouldn't really have to understand underlying proprietary protocols of that other system. Integration should be an easy thing with adapters, not that I need to have a PhD in using that one adapter. And the tool has to provide agility. Developers need to be able to work the way they've always worked. Fast, quick, being able to make those changes. We think Neuron's the right choice here because we built it specifically targeting the .NET developer. We wanted to build loosely coupled solutions, so we knew the tools and their outputs had to be, you know, almost independent. We couldn't build deep dependencies between these things because we wanted to be able to make changes very quickly so customers could build solutions, stand them up very quickly. We wanted something easy to learn. We didn't want someone to have to go through 2 months worth of training just to become semi-competent with a tool. Developers should be able to pick something up within a day, learn how to juggle with it. And we wanted to make working with new technology easy. You know, one of the things that Neuron does very well, abstracts the difficulty of a lot of these back-end systems, including working with WCF. We built it on .NET for .NET developers. So we're really providing the plumbing so developers don't have to spend their time trying to figure it out, trying to build it themselves. And that's important. So Neuron ESB, as I said, developed for developers. Right? That's our target audience. We wanted an enterprise service bus to really facilitate integration, web service routing, and brokering, something that you could stand up solutions very quickly with in a fraction of the time. And that's important for everyone, just not the .NET developers, so they don't have to worry about, wow, this is going to take me 2 months to learn. It's also really important for the business. They can get their solutions up in a fraction of the time. Well, that's a developer developing that solution in a fraction of the time. That's value. So let's go in and talk about some of the things that we're going to go over today. With pipelines, mentioned a little bit of this. Auditing and reporting, tracing, these are all kind of like elements, plumbing that you would expect to have. Right? Part of a reliability story is if a message fails, hey, that message is still someplace. Right? It gets logged someplace as a failure with the information around that and the original message. We want to show you how you can actually control that with Neuron, not just in pipelines, but also the configuration. And then with Neuron, you also have this configuration store. You can store XML documents, schemas, XSLT transformations. You can store all sorts of things. Well, you might need to access this at runtime, but we allow you to do that within a pipeline pretty easily. And then we introduced environmental variables, specifically for deployment groups. So you might ask, what are deployment groups? Well, think about if you're working for any kind of company. Typically, you have, as a developer, your own development environment. Once you've developed this, you hand it over to QA. QA is testing it in their isolated environment, different servers, things of that nature. Then from there, it might go over to a performance testing environment, to a staging, and then finally it rolls out to production. In each one of these environments, there could be different resources. These resources could have different names, different locations. Well, deployment groups in Neuron allows you to create variables and assign them values for each type of deployment group. Then at runtime, all you're doing is picking which deployment group you want to run under. You have access to those variables. Well, I'm going to show you, you have access to the variables in the UI through configuration, but you also have access to them at runtime just in a pipeline. You can retrieve those values. So great when you're doing development and you're doing testing. Next thing is adapters. So we'll show you how to configure a custom SMTP adapter we put together, and also building your own adapters and how easy that is. We took a lot of time to make sure that our adapter framework was something that was effective, but simple to implement. We didn't want to go back to the point where, hey, writing an adapter, that's a 2 or 3 week affair, and you have to put on your PhD hat. that's really the case with a lot of products. With Neuron, it should be a 20-minute affair. We want to show you the value of using metadata to drive the configuration of those adapters at runtime. Lastly, if we have time, so we've talked about Neuron auditing, so there's no reason why auditing can't be part of any solution, and the key there is being able to access the data in those audit tables. Most of the data that we put in our tables are accessible, plain text, easy to get. However, we serialize our entire Neuron ESP message into one field. Well, you may want to be able to extract that and do XPaths off of it. So we put together some SQL CLR Neuron functions to make that easier for you to do. So that actually allows you to call these functions within your own stored procs and things of that nature. For a customer recently, I put together a solution where Neuron auditing is a central part of that, where we have to track failures as it goes on. And if there is a failure, one of the things we do is we go ahead and query the failed message table. We extract the message with all the error information and send those things out as notification alerts. But very easy, and the nice thing about that, we didn't have to write our own auditing infrastructure. We just used a native Neuron infrastructure for that. So, without further ado, let's go into Neuron ESP in a demo. Have some virtual machines up. Give me a moment and I'll switch control over there. Okay, folks. I hope everyone can see this. I hope it fills the screen. I have a couple of virtual machines up. One is a Windows 2008 machine, one is an Active Directory controller, and an Exchange box. The Active Directory controller and the Exchange box, that's actually running Microsoft Outlook. So I can receive some emails for notifications. If I switch back to my Windows 2008 box, this is of course running Visual Studio 2010, SQL Server, as well as Neuron. So, to begin with, let's go ahead and simply do some basic routing and submit some messages. Imagine we have books that we want to purchase. We want to submit these. We might need to validate these later, do something interesting, but what we want to do is be able to control exceptions, control messaging, apply auditing when we need to, and things of that nature. Now, when we start working with Neuron, one of the first things we want to do is we want to think about what the topic topology should look like. Now, this is important simply because topics are defining where these messages are routed to, who they should go to. Sometimes they represent an organizational structure, sometimes business requirements. So getting the topic topology down right, kind of important. I'm big on that. If you look, I've put some together here, where basically it's demo is my root topic. Then there's bookstore, bookstore.purchases, and then there's any exceptions. I have an exception subtopic with various subtopics off of that. Duplicate records, not found, system, validation. So it gives me the ability to route to a lot of different things. Okay. On the networking side of the house, I've been just choosing TCP for right now, and I've enabled auditing. If I want, I could also choose MSN2. So if something didn't reach an endpoint, I can have an adapter policy determine the retries and the expiration, and then automatically, on failure, that message would get logged to the failed message database. That's one of the nice things when you enable auditing, is that anytime a failure occurs in the system, that message isn't lost, it actually gets placed in the Neuron failed message table. So you can always access it later. Now, generally, I have a publisher. Demo published books, pretty simple. I can send on all these topics, and I've got a subscriber. Fantastic. Demo subscribe to books. And it can subscribe to just purchases. So I might want to go ahead and send a message through and subscribe to it just to see if things are working. Now I have some test messages set up. Under data, I told you we have a data store. Several messages. I'll be using this XML document here. I already have this copied out. And I also have some transformations I'm going to do. I'm going to transform a book to purchase, which is kind of nice. So that means I can take an input like this document, Control A, copy it out, go back to transformations. I have my XSLT, I can put in my input doc, and I can go ahead and test the transform, and I have a transformation. And then I have various schemas that I can validate the book against. I'm actually using the sample pipelines ESB config file. It's a sample that we ship. I've slightly modified it. Notice also on deployment, under databases, I've created a Neuron audit database. Pretty simple to do. You just put it in the server, the name of the database, and if it doesn't already exist, when you hit apply, it'll be created on the fly. And my deployment groups today, I just have the development deployment group. And we'll talk about environmental variables, but I have a couple defined. A name of a transform I'm going to run later, and also an XPath statement for reference. Okay, so let's go ahead and just make sure a message goes through. I think I have a test client already up. Let's shut that down, and let's bring this up. Clear that. Connect to demo, subscribe to books, set to receive, and let's just go ahead and send something. We could use either another test client, or we could go ahead and just write some code and submit a message that way using the .NET API. Here I have a console app up. The console app is pretty simple. Again, we went through this in our Tips and Tricks webcast a few weeks back. I have a using statement for Neuron ESB. I'm referencing the Neuron assemblies. And I have one app.config file that points to the Neuron ESB service. Now, to submit a message, I have the book message here. To submit this, fairly easy to do. We'll just go ahead and create a publisher object. Equals new publisher, fantastic. And the publisher I believe is demo published books. Done. So the first thing we do with the publisher is we simply do connect. We'll do a send XML. We're going to go ahead and send it to the topic demo bookstore purchases. Fantastic. And let's just go ahead and send the message that we've defined. Great. And that's pretty much all we need to do. So by sending this out, run the debugger, I'll bring up my test client. And what do I have? I have the message. Pretty simple. Now let's do something a little bit more interesting with this. Let's clear this. Let's go back to Neuron, and let's go ahead and we'll start with a pipeline. Now, I've already created a pipeline here. Let me go back in here. Pipelines, inbound process book. Not a whole lot in here right now. No, not to worry. Let's open up the audit message. This is a code shape within Neuron. It allows us full .NET access. I have access to the message, and I have access to full .NET IntelliSense. Fantastic. So I think one of the first things we want to do is audit the message. So with Neuron auditing, by default, we audit the message after the pipeline is finished executing. Well, that means that, well, maybe the pipeline changes the message. So the message that we audit could very well be the transformed and changed one. Well, we want to make sure that we audit the original message. So pretty easy. You can control Neuron auditing just in the code shape itself. A couple of lines of code here. Notice here I'm just using Neuron libraries. I'm getting the root topic off the topic this was submitted on. And then from here, I'm using the pipeline runtime helper. And I'm doing an audit send. So let's go ahead and see the arguments here. All I'm doing here is I'm saying grab who the publisher is, grab the current section ID, and go ahead and log the current date. So once I do that, I'm done. I have auditing. Pretty simple to do. I can control this. This is just taking the neuron message and putting it in the neuron message history table in the auditing database. And we'll see how this works. I'll hit save. I'll hit apply. And now what I can do is, notice I sent a message in earlier, and if I go into auditing, I have some work here. All right, I audited all the messages, send, receive, send, receive. And notice there's only one send, one receive, one send. Perfect. Let's remove that. Failed. Nothing failed. Now let's take our pipeline and associate it with our publisher. Demo publish books. Take our pipeline, associate it, inbound process book on the client publish event. Hit apply. Just want to make sure. Inbound. Audit's done. Great. Now just hit save. That easy. Now if I run and publish another message, great. Go back here. If I go into activity, I have an extra message on the send. Notice that? So no matter what, I'm going to have two. One at the beginning of the pipeline and one that Neuron does once the pipeline is finished executing. Great. Now let's go back into our pipeline. Now, maybe I want to do some other things. Like add validation step for the schema. And then if that fails, maybe I want to go ahead and branch that off and submit the message to an exception topic. Maybe I want to do some logging in the middle. There's actually quite a few things I can do. So let's go ahead and try this out. We'll go ahead and move this up. We'll drag on a validate schema shape. Valid. We'll give it a name. We'll pick a schema. And we're just literally accessing our Neuron config store. We're putting the schema in. And here we go. Pretty simple. Now, if the schema is good, we'll go down this branch. If it's not, we'll go down the other. And maybe one of the first things we want to do is add some logging. So let's go ahead, add some logging to this. We'll drop on another code step. Log it. Now we're going to do some different things here when we're logging. First thing is we want to create a custom message using information that we have. So let's go ahead and add that in. Now, let me expand this. Basically, I'm saying the book purchase not recognized, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the name of the pipeline, and let's go ahead and make sure that this shape is the, is it valid shape? Let's go ahead and change that. And then I'm adding the publisher ID, topic, and message, and that's just so that the message that actually gets written to the event log is something that we can understand. But more so, I want to be able to use the same error message later. So some other things I'm going to do is I'm going to actually persist this error information to the message's context property so I can retrieve it later, not just in this pipeline, but in other pipelines, in other subscribers once it's crossed the bus. It's kind of the beauty of metadata. I can do things with it. So here I've added a demo prefix and the actual property name. I'm capturing the message and saying it's a validation exception. And then from there, I'm just going to use system diagnostics to go ahead and log this. Fantastic. Now once I do something like this, what else do I want to do? I want to republish this to the exceptions topic. So let me go ahead, select the publish step, I'll drag it on, and we'll just go ahead and configure this to exceptions validation topic, just like that. And then it's followed by a cancellation step. And this way we're not publishing the message to the original topic still. Pretty easy to do. Now that we've done all this, in the valid stage, let's go ahead and do a transformation. But in this case, let's go ahead and grab the name of the transform we need to run from the configuration so we can show you how to grab it from an environmental variable. Okay? So we'll grab it from an environmental variable that we've already defined at runtime. So in other words, if the name changes from development to QA, we'll get that changed name. Then we'll go ahead and we'll query the neuron configuration at runtime to actually get the raw XSLT to run. Pretty simple. So first off, let's go ahead and get the environmental variable. So I'm just going to go ahead, add another pivot shape. Transform it. Love it. I'll open it up. I'll expand it. Now let's go ahead and add some code in here. So notice the first thing I'm doing is I'm accessing the neuron environment out of the configuration. And I'm grabbing this variable, demo book transform. Now, if I go here, under deployment, under environmental variables, demo book transform equates to book to purchases for this development group. So book to purchases is defined under data, XSL, book to purchases. So now the goal is, what I want to do is, I want to grab this XSLT content and I want to run it. That's what I want to do. So let me go back to the pipeline, inbound. I've got that. So then the next step is, how do I grab it? Well, retrieving it, a little simpler than you'd imagine. Let's go here, add another line of code. So in this case, all I'm doing is, again, I'm using the pipeline runtime helper, and I'm passing in the name that we got from the environmental variable to the configuration. Now, at runtime, neuron configuration is in memory. So this is lightning fast. There's no database lookups, things of this nature. It's just fast. So notice, I've got the XSLT. Now, after I have the XSLT, the only thing I'm going to do then is I'm just going to go ahead and write some .NET code, typical .NET code that you would write to execute a transform. So let's go ahead and add that in there. And I'll just copy and paste this in. And notice, I'm loading the XSLT, creating compiled transform. Here, I'm just using string writer. I'm executing, and I'm resetting the data of the message to the new transformed message. That's the key. Pretty simple. Not that hard to do. So let's go ahead and run this, see what happens. So I'll hit apply, I'll hit save, fantastic. Bring up this, notice this format. This is the original book format. Let's go ahead and make sure the data is correct. Notice this data is bad. Let's go ahead and make it good first. Let's go ahead and run it. And notice the data is now transformed because the math got executed. So that means we validated it, then we went ahead and we grabbed the name of the transform from the environmental variable. And at runtime, it could be something completely different. Then we went ahead and looked that information up from the neuron configuration in memory, and then we executed it. Now, let's go ahead and see what we have on the auditing side. No failures. We've got our message history, 2 sends and a receive. Oh, and notice, if I go down, the first send is the one that we audited, so we have the original book. And the next message is the new one, the one that got transformed. So we have both, before and after the pipeline. So let me go ahead and delete that. We look here, well, typical SharePoint services exceptions. Nothing to do with Neuron, but let me clear that. Now we'll send in some bad data. We'll just change that to a 1 and a 1. Great. We'll clear that. We'll send. So our test client should never get a message because it was bad data. And if we look in the Neuron auditing now, message history, notice we had one send, and notice we had another send on the validation exception topic. No failed messages because we're not auditing any kind of failures yet. But notice in the event log, hey, we have our error message that we failed validation. Pretty simple to do. Now, typically what we want to do is maybe add some typically what we want to do is maybe add an SMTP adapter, add something to maybe monitor those exceptions, forward them somewhere. Now, another thing that we could do is also take that message, log it to the failed message history table. Now, just like we can control regular auditing, we can control the failed message auditing as well. So let's go ahead, see what we have to do to modify this. Let's go back into inbound, and I have this, logging it. Let's go ahead and add one more line of code. Perfect. So notice here, again, I'm using the pipeline runtime helper, and I'm saying call the failed message. In this case, I'm passing to it, it's a send. I'm passing the data, as well as the exception type and the message. Now, if I go ahead and apply this, save. Again, let's just make sure our activity is cleared out. Delete all. Did I pick save? Yes, I did. Great. Now let's go ahead and run this again. Start. Submitting our message. And what do we have? If I go to the event log, I have another event logged. Fantastic. And if I go under activity, notice my message history, again and again, validation exception. But now under failed messages, notice I actually have the failed message with all the information. It failed, and the validation exception. So again, great way to control auditing within Neuron. Great way to handle things. Now that we've done this, which is great, let's go ahead and extend this a bit. So by default, again, pipeline failures, endpoint failures will always write to that failed message history table. Kind of nice. You can control that in the pipeline. But now let's go ahead and maybe set up an SMTP adapter to handle this. Generally speaking, we could go ahead and have that, subscribe to the message, and send this out, control it. So configuration is kind of nice. We're going to use that and show you how to maybe set some of the properties of the adapter just in the pipeline. So we can dynamically create things like the subject line and in the body, things of that nature. So let's go ahead and set this up. First, you're going to go ahead and connections, go into adapters, and if it's not already added, you'll add the adapter. This is an SMTP adapter. It's new. We'll be making this available to folks. You'll go here, add an adapter endpoint. Fantastic. I'll call this the Demo Send Exception Notifications Adapter. We want to make sure that we mark Include Metadata, since we're going to be using metadata in a pipeline to control some of these properties. I'll pick it. It's a subscribe mode, and the party ID here is I've already created a party to subscribe just to exceptions. So let's go ahead and do that. Properties are pretty simple. First one is I have an exchange box, That's the address. I can set up delivery and receipt notifications, choose XSLT. The from and to, from will be Marty at ppm CSD Microsoft.com. There we go. And it's going to the administrator. Perfect. No attachments here. And I could add file attachments if I want to. It's not HTML. I could put in a dummy file name for now. Let's do bookpurchase.xml. I could overwrite that later. The message is going to be an attachment. I'm going to leave the subject blank, and I'm just going to go ahead and create the body. So what I want to do is send an email out, but have the original message as the attachment. I'll hit apply. Pretty simple. Now what I want to do is probably create a pipeline. Outbound process mail. So I already have one set up. I have a code shape in it. And now I need to put some information in the code shape. So one of the first things I'm going to do is, remember in the inbound pipeline, we set some custom properties, the error message and error type. So maybe one of the first things I want to do is I want to grab that information back. So I'm going to use the get property and grab that information. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the context properties of the message. Basically, I'm going to set the subject and the body. Every adapter, or at least most of them, have context properties. And you can actually override existing properties of the adapter by simply setting these in the pipeline. In this case, I'm setting the subject. And notice here, book purchase, ISBN number, unknown, and here's the error type. And I'm setting the body to this message. So I'll go ahead, hit save here, hit apply. Now let's go into messaging. Let's go into our subscriber. Demo subscriber to exceptions, and let's attach that pipeline. And let's make sure it's on the client receive event. Hit OK, hit apply, hit save, and we're done. Pretty simple. Again, I'll go back in the Exchange box and Outlook, no email. Now let's go ahead and send a good message and a bad message. Let's clear out everything. I'll clear out my logs, clear. That's perfect. Let's go in Neuron, activity, failed, delete that, and message history. We'll go ahead and delete that for now. We have our subscriber up. Let's send a good message first, and then we'll send a bad message. Start. We got our good message and we got the transformed result, which is what we were expecting. Now let's go ahead and just to double check. No failures. Now let's go ahead and send the bad message. And we'll run this. Great. Obviously the subscriber didn't get it. We've got a bad message, and we've got that message sent. And now if I go to email, you gotta love this, live fire. Let's go ahead and see what happened here. Do I have validation? Let's see here. It was actually received by that subscriber, so let's try this again. And my guess is this is going down an adapter policy path. Let's go ahead and choose none right now. Hit apply. Otherwise, we'll just keep on retrying. Ah. Oh, I know why, I think. I spelled administrator wrong. A-N-M-I-N. Let's try that. Can't send it out. So what will happen here is we're not seeing errors because the adapter policy is basically telling it to still retry every minute. So let's go ahead. Make sure we have this right now. Fantastic. Hit apply, hit save. This will go ahead and restart. Now I'll go ahead and send in another message. This is a bad one. Great. And we've got our message. Notice setting the right email address works every time. So here I have formatted email, here's the body, and here's the original purchase. So pretty easy to set and then override properties of an adapter. Easy to do. So maybe one of the other things we might want to do is write our own adapter. So let's go ahead and do that. I took the liberty of already creating a class library. One of the things you have to remember with this is Visual Studio 2010. Neuron, so when you create the class library, one of the things you've got to do is go into Properties and make sure you set the .NET Framework target to 3.5. Very important. If you don't set it to 3.5, we will not recognize it when you add it to the Neuron adapter list. You'll want to add some references. Neuron ESB is a reference you'll want to add. Design and drawing or other references you'll want to add, as well as System.Transactions. Important, because we use transactions. So let's go ahead and add that in there. Let me go into my adapter. So what I've done here is I've created the class, just called it custom file class. Let's add some using statements. Neuron.esb, fantastic. Using system.io, we're basically going to create a file adapter, so we'll need that. And let's go component model, because we're going to add some property grid properties, and using neuron.esp.adapters because we need the adapter interface. Hope that makes sense. So, creating a Neuron adapter, pretty easy. Using statements for Neuron, using statements for adapters, system component for the property grid, and then any other using statements for any logic, any custom specific code you're going to write. So now it's ESB adapter base, and all I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click and I'm going to say implement the abstract class. And lo and behold, what do I have? There's three methods for a Neuron adapter. There's connect, disconnect, send an endpoint. So what we want to do first is add a couple of properties. We'll add some class level properties, and then we'll add the properties for our property grid itself. So let me just go ahead, copy and paste these in real quick, and then explain. Here we go. So mode, actually we won't be using it in this adapter, but mode is nice because in the constructor we actually set that. And so then when you're executing, you can determine what mode this is in. Our adapters support a publish mode, send and receive mode. You can do request reply, solicit response, 5 different modes you can do. In this case, we're going to build just a file adapter that's going to send information out to a directory. So notice, I've got two properties. I want a folder path, and so I'm basically saying, hey, use the editor, so I can just use an ellipsis and pick a folder, and a file name property. Pretty simple. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to add a constructor. In that constructor, we're basically going to set the capabilities that we're going to support. So here we go. We create the constructor. Notice the adapter modes, I'm setting it. This is something the adapter framework will call. And here I'm setting our capabilities. I'm saying here's the name of our adapter. And if I'm going to support metadata properties on the message, then that's the prefix, and then file name and path, these are the properties. Now once I do that, under connect, the only thing I'm going to do here is I'm basically going to go into the set directory folder. So under connect, it's going to be real simple, equals new directory info. And all I'm going to do is set the folder path. And I'm done. Under disconnect, we really don't have any resources there, so we won't be doing anything there. Now, under send point, this is where we'll check for metadata, and we'll actually send out the message itself. So pretty simple to do. We'll go ahead, do our try catch. Fantastic. And always on the catch, we do the same thing. We're going to actually use the neuron function for raise error, so it gets reported properly. And then we throw it. All we do here. On the try side, first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab the properties, check for metadata, set some default properties. So maybe string path, fantastic. That's going to equal the folder path that was set. There we go. And we'll go ahead from there and we'll say, great, string, file name equals. We'll get a default file name. Only though, if it wasn't set in the property grid, we'll give it that. Fantastic. Set by default. If it's empty, let's go ahead and set it. Great. Now all we're going to do is check if include metadata. So that's a checkbox on the adapter. We're going to check for metadata. Really, really that simple. So here, let's put this back in. We got property name. We don't need type. File name, great. And this is going to be file name. So we're basically setting and checking the metadata. So if someone sets this in a pipeline, fantastic, we'll use it. If it doesn't get set in the pipeline, if it doesn't get set in the grid, then we're just compiling our own. All right, toString, and let's go ahead. There we are. Now, the actual logic for this, pretty simple. All we're doing is writing to a folder after that. There we go. So the whole file name now is just the path plus file name. Get the bytes. Here's the file, create, write it out. Pretty much done at that point. So what else do you have to do with an adapter? Well, once you build the adapter, rebuild. Let's see. What do we got going on here? Perfect. Yep. Perfect. Rebuild. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and grab the library. Let's go ahead and put it, just copy it right into the Neuron USB adapters folder. Just like so. Hold on here, let me close this very quickly. Great, let's open it back up. Let's connect. Now, let's go ahead and add the adapter and create a point, connection, adapters, add, custom file. It shows up as a custom adapter. I'll hit there. Let's create an adapter endpoint. New. All right, exceptions to file. Here we go. Custom file, subscribe, party ID. This is now going to be subscribing to exceptions as well. Include metadata. Folder path. And I'll just go ahead and create a new one. I'll say this is going to be out. Hit apply. And now what I want to do is also for now, let's just go ahead and actually let's go ahead and just simply create a new subscriber for this. New. Demo. Write the file. Add another subscription. Let's go in here and just say exceptions .star. I'm going to be able to receive these. Fantastic. So I'm using a wildcard. I'll hit apply. And then on the pipeline side, I'll just go ahead and create another pipeline and set some properties where I'm doing file name. So let's go ahead and there we go. Add a pipeline. Set file name. Grab some code. Edit. Put it in. File. I think it's file name. Let's double check on that. There we go. Spelling important. And let's go ahead and just call this something.xml. There we go. Pretty simple. Apply it. Messaging. Subscriber. Demo write the file. Select pipeline. And we have the set file name, on client receive, set, apply, and one last thing, reset the adapter endpoint to use the new subscriber. Apply, save, fantastic. We still have our message, let's get rid of it, we go back, send in another message, it's bad, start. And although we went fast, things work well, we still get our email, and we also get our file. So we get our email, and if I navigate to the window, I also have something.xml. So pretty easy to write an adapter, setting it up, putting it all up. The last thing I was going to do, I think we ran out of time, but the last thing I was going to do is show you how to use Neuron functions from SQL Server to actually extract the message body out of our tables. If you actually go into our message tables, here we go, execute, fantastic. So this is what the data looks like in one of our auditing tables. Notice the actual bits are in binary compressed format. So what we did, we wrote some functions you can use within SQL Server. So if I have sequence ID 5, notice here a little test harness. I'm just going to go ahead and select the message with sequence ID 5. And I'm selecting the message field, which is a binary. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it to a Neuron SQL CLR function. And I'm going to basically say, give me back, take the binary, decompress it, get the ESP message, grab the actual data from that message, and return it to SQL Server in the stored proc or whatever function I'm using. And we have two functions, body as XML, as well as get value by XPath. So now if I run this, I should actually get the XML body out of that binary. And there you have it, the XML binary. Which means I can also use this XPath and maybe just get the ISBN field. And I can use that in stored procs. So we did that specifically so we could create better solutions incorporating Neuron auditing in full-featured auditing solutions. So let me go back to our presentation. Here we go. Great. So I hope everyone got a lot out of this. I think we showed quite a bit. You can do quite a bit with Neuron. Full control over auditing and logging and metadata, and very easy to develop adapters as well as pipelines to extend on all these things. I think it's certainly the right product for .NET developers, since you're working in a .NET environment, whether it's in the code shape within pipelines or in .NET itself, creating adapters, or even submitting messages using our API. It's so easy to extend everything you're doing with .NET with Neuron ESP. For more information, please visit our site. We'll be publishing more white papers. We just built a white paper on implementing a gathered pattern within our pipelines. We'll be posting that soon. I think we have other webcasts scheduled, specifically tips and tricks again, as well as web services. If you'd like to see a live demo of this or contact us, please send us an email, or you can always contact me directly. And that's about all I had. Any questions?
Great. Thank you, Marty, for this awesome presentation. We did have a question come through. Can we see a sample of receiving endpoints?
Yes, I won't have time to actually build that, but I can show you let's see here, I can show you some of the adapters that support that. So our SQL adapter supports that, MSMQ does, our file adapter does, the MQ series adapter does. Basically what you're doing is on the connect function, you're basically going to set up a worker thread and spawn a separate receive function. And then we actually have some standard code that we use to manage that and handle errors and things of that nature. Whoever's interested, let me know. I can actually send you a sample of how we do it.
Thanks, Marty. If anyone has any more questions, please feel free to type them at this time. In the meantime, I'm going to click through a few polling questions, and we greatly appreciate your feedback. First question: was this content helpful for your business? Yes or no? All right, thank you. Second question: please rate the presentation content. Excellent, good, or poor? Give it a couple seconds. All right, thank you. And the last question: would you like us to schedule a follow-up? Yes or no? 15 more seconds. All right, thank you. If there are no further questions, we'd like to thank Marty again for this wonderful presentation. This webcast is a part of our Neuron ESB series. We will be hosting our next webcast, Web Services and Patterns, on December 9th. We are also hosting a Neuron Demo, Tips and Tricks webcast on November 18th. We will be forwarding out the recorded version of this presentation when it becomes available, and will include more information about the next two upcoming webcasts. If you have any further questions about this presentation, please feel free to email Marty at the email address provided on the slide. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webcast. You're now free to disconnect. Thank you.